Greetings all, Shane Bruce, Resto Mod Daisy with yet another informative video about some of the bits and pieces, the tweaks and twerks of building stocks for BB guns and determining what kind of stock might best fit you. So what we've got in front of you tonight are 3 examples of Daisy BB guns with different stocks. Up here at the top we've got a current production Daisy model 1938B. This one has a Chief AJ stock on it. And I wanted to include this stock in tonight's discussion because it's got the very smallest drop-on comb available and one of the longest length of pull measurements that we're going to see tonight. The second gun we're going to look at, somewhere in that order, is this kind of nice little Daisy model 108, number 108, model 39. Not the most common Daisy, actually preceded the number 111 model 40 Red Ryder, but was never made as a Red Ryder or commemorative gun. Still a very nice piece to have in any collection. And the bottom gun down here is a number 111 model 40 Resto Mod that has a custom stock on it, and as I will demonstrate here in just a few minutes, has got the largest drop on comb of any of the 3 guns that we're going to look at tonight. And it has an intermediate stock length, so it's not as long as the Chief AJ, it's not as short as the standard stock Daisy, but it's kind of in between, sort of that 3 bearish kind of deal. We like to think it's just right. All right, so a lot of times when I'm talking with folks about stocks for Daisies, common questions do arise, because I normally ask 2 questions about building a stock for anybody. The first question is going to be, what's your length of pull? And people are sometimes a little surprised by that question. So let me explain that to you, because I'll be doing the explaining around here. Length of pull is the distance between the center of the trigger to the top of the heel of the stock. And on this particular gun, this Resto Mod with the Slim Jim, that number is, whoops, it slid, about 14.5 inches. All right, for comparison, the length of pull on this pretty standard stock Daisy from center of trigger to top of the stock is about 13.5. All right, you got that? So about an inch shorter than the Resto Mod version. The Chief AJ stock, center of trigger to top of stock, about 15.25, but this stock has been cut just a bit. And it was originally 15.5. So that's got the longest length of pull of any of the 3 stocks we're looking at here today. And this is marketed as an adult stock. I shoot a lot of these guns, I build a lot of these stocks, and I like this 13.5 because it still feels compact and it's easy to handle, but it is longer than standard. So that covers length of pull. That's a measurement of how far it is from the center of the trigger to the top of the heel of the stock, and that's an index that you can use to figure out if the stock is going to be long enough to be comfortable. Now there's another component in stock measurements, and that's called drop on the comb. This part of the stock here is usually referred to as the comb. So when you're trying to determine what your drop on the comb is, you need to get a measurement from, let's go over here and look at the sight plane. We have a straight edge lined up that goes through the sights, at the front sight and the back sight and the front sight. And what you try to establish is what the line is between those 2 sights, and that's called your line of sight. So you follow the line of sight down on the square, and you drop a tape measure in to see how far the distance is from the top of the comb to the line of sight. In this particular case, on this particular gun, it's about 2.5 inches. And that's what I make most of my guns, because that allows me to keep a heads-up posture when the weapon's shoulder. I don't feel like I'm craned over on top of the gun. Balance is good, so you're able to move and shoot and do all those things pretty well. Now, let's pull the Resto Mod out of the way, and let's stick the AJ stock version in place and see what its drop on the comb is. So we line up the front sight and we line up the rear sight, and we take our tape measure and we see how much distance we have. And you can see on the Chief AJ, it's got a very shallow drop on the comb, maybe 1 3/8. And the end result of that is I feel like I'm craned way up on the stock when I mount the gun. And I don't like it. I don't have my head far enough down to get a good alignment and good cheek weld. So in my mind, this is not what I would want. Everybody's different though. Some people like a higher comb, some people like a lower comb. So the Chief AJ is about 1 3/8. Now let's look at our third gun, which is the classic number 108 Model 39 Daisy. Now this stock profile is going to be common across all the Red Ryders, the current production guns, the old guns. So we've got our front sight lined up, we've got our rear sight lined up, and we drop our tape on there, and we discover it's about 2 1/4, 2 3/8. So the extreme example of the Restomod stock is really only about a 1/2 inch more clearance on drop of comb. But as you can see, the look between the 3 guns is radically different. So that concludes our small short talk on length of pull and drop on comb. And that's all I got for you tonight, kids. This is Shane Bruce with Restomod Daisy, signing off.